Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Houston Texans versus Seattle Seahawks Week 8 matchup based on analytics. Each week, I collect all of the current 2017 NFL team data in order to analyze and project potential NFL performance. And since it's a weekly collection, there will always be some fluidity in terms of team trends each week. However, there will always be little nuggets of truth that could become bigger nuggets of truth as the season continues. So stick around as I analyze each week's matchups based on analytics. And if you are new to the channel, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So starting with this game between the Texans and the Seahawks. So when you look at the basic NFL stat comparison data, and basic NFL stat data is basically looking at how the offense is doing, how the defense is doing, how special teams is doing. That data pretty much favors the Seahawks in this particular game. And let's get into some reasons why. So first off, when it comes to the total O score, which is the offense's ability to create first downs on offense, the Seahawks are better in that regard than the Texans. The Texans have not had the most efficient offense. The Texans do some things well. Deshaun Watson has shown some goodness, but there are some inefficiencies with this offense that still continue to plague it to this week. And then, of course, you look at the defense. The Seahawks have a better defense in terms of preventing first downs. The total D score is more so in favor of the Seahawks. You look at turnover ratio. The Seahawks do not turn over the football as much as the Texans do. The Seahawks also allow less sacks than the Texans do. But the offensive score percentage is in favor of the Texans. So essentially you have a Texans offense that's less efficient than the Seahawks, but they do put up more points than the Seahawks, which sounds kind of like a opposite type of thing, but that's just what you're looking at here. So essentially the Texans do have some advantages on offense because of the ability to score points, because it's like this. However you get it done, like it's essentially like this, okay? However you get it done, if you put points on the board, you're doing something right. So even though the Seahawks are better in terms of preventing sacks, even though the Seahawks are better in terms of preventing turnovers, they are just not putting up as many points as they need to as the Texans are. So from that standpoint, I tend to lean or give it to the Texans, because even though it's not amazing how they're putting up points, they are putting up points. So you should be praising them, or at least acknowledging the fact that they do have the better offense because they are actually able to put up more points per drive. And then when you look at defensive data, defensive offensive score percentage, this more so favors the Seahawks. The Seahawks have a much better defense than the Texans in terms of preventing points. So again, this is kind of the opposite sort of situation where the Seahawks are just able to prevent more points, which is really what matters, for a defense. So even if you're not the most sexiest defense ever, if you can prevent points from being put on the board, you're doing your job as a defense. And the Seahawks are much better in terms of that respect. But the Texans do the sexy things better. The Texans get more turnovers compared to the Seahawks from a percentage standpoint. The Texans also get more sacks than the Seahawks from a percentage standpoint. And again, that's comes to the realization that the Seahawks are not the sexiest. They don't create a lot of turnovers or as many. They don't really create as many sacks, but they do get the job done in terms of preventing points, which is another reason why the Seahawks are favoring this in this game from that kind of respect over the Texans. So the Texans do a lot of sexy things, but they're not the most efficient. Like, all those sacks are not turning into less points. All those turnovers are not turning into less points given up. And because of that, that's why the Seahawks are favored in that respect. Then when you look at special teams, so punt return yardage, kick return yardage, those kind of factors. Punt return yardage is more so in favor of the Texans. Kick return yardage is with the Seahawks. Defensive punt return yardage and defensive kick return yardage is more so with the Seahawks. The Texans do not have the best defensive special teams. Then when you look at field goal percentage, more so with the Texans. Texans have a really good place kicker this year compared to the rest of the NFL. Extra point percentage is more so with the Seahawks, and punting average is more so with the Texans. I would say when it comes to special teams, I would give the ability to score on special teams to the Texans versus the Seahawks, but I would give the other sort of stuff, defensive special teams. I definitely would give that more so to the Seahawks overall in terms of yardage. Punt return yardage, kick return yardage. I would give that to them. So I kind of would split that a bit overall. But what I would generally say is that the Seahawks have a better defense. Like the better defense is the Seahawks. The better offense is technically the Texans, although the Texans do have some turnovers and some sack issues. But the overall data does favor the Seahawks because they have a better balance when it comes to their defense and offense's abilities. And on top of that, they have some advantages in terms of special teams and in some sort of area. So, but again, the overall data favors the Seahawks. This is by no means an unwinnable game for the Texans. It's just that the overall data favors the Seahawks because when you look at their ability to put up points and their ability to prevent points combined, it's a little bit better than the Texans in that respect. So then we get into some other sort of data points. So now, we looked at the forest. Now let's look at some of the trees. So when you look at completion percentage, this is the Texans' completion percentage data versus the Seahawks' completion percentage data in terms of the Seahawks defense. And this overwhelmingly favors the Texans. Not the Texans, but the Seahawks, excuse me. This is going to be a very big test. This is probably the biggest test that Deshaun Watson has faced all year round. This Seahawks defense is no joke when it comes to preventing completions, and I think this is going to be a key matchup to see what happens because of this issue. And then, of course, you look at the Seahawks offense versus the Texans defense when it comes to completion percentage. This favors the Seahawks offense, except for third down situations, but it does favor the Seahawks when it comes to first down and second down situations for the most part. But third down situations is definitely more so with the Texans. Then you look at rushing downs. This is the Houston Texans rushing offense versus the Seattle Seahawks rushing defense, and this more so favors the Seahawks rushing defense. The Seahawks have a relatively decent rushing defense, and again, this comes back to some of the inefficiencies with the offense of the Texans. They're just not incredibly efficient on every single down, and as a result, it just makes it hard for them to have a good overall ability to create first downs on offense. And then you look at the rushing offense of the Seahawks versus the Texans defense, and this more so favors the Texans. The Texans are another team that has a relatively strong rushing defense, and it's kind of a little bit of the Seahawks not having the best running offense and the Texans having a fairly also above average rushing defense, which is why the Texans are favored here. Then you look at passing downs. This is the Texans passing offense versus the Seahawks passing defense, and the Seahawks are overwhelmingly favored here when it comes to first down, second down, and third down situations. Despite the inefficiencies that the Texans have in terms of completion percentage, they still have been able to find a way to get it done. And that's the one thing I'll say about Deshaun Watson is that it hasn't been really efficient, but he's been getting the job done. But this is one of those games where I think, again, this is going to be his biggest test this year because this has thrown a lot of quarterbacks off. Jared Goff, etc., who have been really efficient, but they go against the Seahawks defense and they're just a completely different quarterback. So we'll definitely see what happens this week. But this is a very big test for Deshaun Watson because of these particular variables. Then you look at the Seahawks offense versus Texans defense when it comes to passing downs. More so favors the Texans defense in terms of second down situations and third down situations. So definitely in the Texans' favor here. And then you look at sack rate. Texans offense versus Seahawks defense. And this is actually evenly matched in terms of this particular area. Most of the sacks that the Texans have given up have come on second down, and most of the sacks that the Seahawks have been able to force have been on second down. So that's actually that's the one down I think you should clue in on and look at and see what happens on that particular down. Then you look at the Seahawks offense versus Texans defense when it comes to sacks. More so favors the Seahawks in terms of first down and third down situations. Then you look at interception ratio of the Texans versus Seahawks, and this more so favors the Seahawks defense in terms of first down situations, second down situations. And then finally, you look at the Seahawks offense versus Texans defense when it comes to picks or interceptions, and this more so favors the Texans defense when it comes to first down situations and third down situations. So overall, my general feelings about this game, I think it's a Seahawks victory. It reminds me a lot of the Rams game that the Seahawks had earlier this year. They're going up against a quarterback that's been really, really hot, been putting up points like crazy, and then he just comes down to earth a little bit in this game. And I could be wrong. I mean, again, I'm as big of a fan of Deshaun Watson as anybody, and you can check the receipt. I got the receipts to match. But I do think that this is going to be a game where I think he's going to be tested, and I think the Seahawks will get the upper hand from that perspective. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be fairly close as well, but I just have to go Seahawks here because I think their defense will be able to slow down the offense that has been a bigger driver. The offense of the Texans has been a big driver of their success this year, and I think that the Seahawks will be able to slow it down, and as a result, they'll get a W because of that particular factor. And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Jimmetrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.